This is Belinda Sanders on ABC Southern Queensland.
Good morning. The bird people love to hate, but did you know there is multiple species, I should say, of the crow? Which one you might be listening to shortly here on ABC Southern Queensland. I don't have a problem with crows. I think they're pretty cool, actually.
Can art and creativity heal invisible wounds?
It takes a lot to come out and talk about mental health.
Now, a unique social experiment hosted by Natalie Bassingthwaite harnesses the healing quality of art.
All will be revealed.
To find out if art can build a brighter future for our mental health.
I think you found your thing. You've nailed it.
Space 22 starts Tuesday, May 17 on ABC TV or log in to stream on ABC iView.
Now it's time to look at the skies with ornithologist, I think that's right, we'll find out what that is, Scott McPhee. And today we are talking about crows. Oh, that's a familiar sound, isn't it? Ornithologist, is that right, Scott?
Yeah, so that just basically means someone who studies birds. So you can actually do that through Charles Sturt Uni, which is where I did it externally. If anyone wants to do it, I thoroughly recommend it.
So it's a degree, ornithology?
It's a graduate diploma, and you can then go on and do masters or PhD. You need to have a degree in a related field before you can do it. So my degree was anthropology and ecology as a minor. So.
Right. Now that, of course, is a very unmistakable sound. A very good morning to you, by the way. How are you?
Yes. Yeah, I'm pretty good, Belinda. Thanks. Yeah, so that was actually a Terrigen Crow there. We'll talk more about them in a minute. So we actually have 3 species of raven, native species of ravens, and 2 of crows. And we also have 1 introduced crow. You remember last time we spoke about introduced birds, and I didn't actually talk about these. These are house crows from Asia, which have come in on some ships, but they're pretty limited to some docklands in southern Australia. We certainly don't get them in the listening area. So if you count them as well, in Australia there's 6 species, and they're all in the one genus, Corvus, so they're quite closely related to each other. And in the listening area, out of those 6, we get 3. So that's the Australian raven, the Terrigen crow, and the little crow.
So what's the difference between a crow and a raven? Except in the movies, the raven's scarier.
Yeah, well, look, there's not a lot of difference, but there's enough to make it significant, I guess, from an ornithological point of view. So ravens are slightly larger. They have bigger throat hackles. So you know how we talk about dogs with hackles where they raise their hairs on their shoulders? Well, crows have longer feathers on their, ravens have longer feathers on their throat. So the ravens will have bigger throat hackles, and if you can actually look in towards the base of the feathers, so ravens, the base of the feathers are grey, whereas they're white in crows.
So I have to say, I think I've got both ravens and crows, because one is all black and slightly bigger, as you said, and then the crow. Well, that might be a magpie. Is the magpie related?
Well, you know, I mean, they are kind of a little bit further out, but the currawongs, magpies, crows, butcherbirds, they are related. Maybe you're thinking of a currawong. Are you seeing white on the tail feathers, on the wings?
Maybe, yeah. They're coming. My daughter is trying to come up with a friendship with this group. Which is working, I might say. It's a whole group of birds, and they're all in that same sort of species.
Yeah. Just be careful, because if you start encouraging too many currawongs, they'll chase away the smaller birds around your garden. But
very good point. Very good point.
Yeah. When I say you'll see white on the crows, like that's only close up at the base of the feathers, the down parts of the feathers. So if you see a crow or a raven calling, and the throat hackles are kind of extended or protruding a bit, you might get a glimpse of a bit of coloration in there. But generally, any crow or raven that you see is just going to have this lovely black sheen all over them. So
definitely seen those, and saw them in the Birds the movie as well, by the way. And
It
also,
doesn't help their reputation, doesn't it, that film?
and Alfred Hitchcock movie, if you can't remember that one. And also the Magpie is slightly different. It has black and white. Yeah, that's different.
They're smaller, and magpies are actually a kind of butcher bird, which we can talk about another time. They're most close. In fact, they're in the same genus as butcher birds. But so the crows and ravens are all corvus, and so in the listening area, the most common one in southeast Queensland is the Terrigen Crow, and they extend from where we are, right up the northern half of Australia into Papua New Guinea and Indonesia. They're about 50 centimetres long, and they're pretty widespread through all habitats, through urban areas, farmlands, forests, and they breed from August to October. And then the Australian raven, which we could get them in the eastern part of the listening area, but more likely in the central and western part. Mm-hmm. They're a little bit larger, probably about 52 centimetres. They have the larger hackles on the throat, and they also have a bare patch of skin just coming off the lower mandible. If you get close enough, look for the bare patch of skin.
And do they sound different?
Yes, and so we'll play some of the calls shortly, and often the sound is really the best way to tell them apart, because a lot of crows, they don't like you getting too close to them, so unless you've got binoculars or a camera or something, it's hard to pick out some of these other features. So, we'll have a listen to the sounds in a tick. And then in the western part of the listening area, there's the little crow. And they're a little bit smaller. They like the dry country. And they're almost like a cross between a crow and a raven. They're a crow, but they have got some visible throat hackles. They'll start breeding soon, from about July onwards. And they do less scavenging, but they will flock. If there's like a plague of grasshoppers or locusts, they'll flock to these different feeding events. So that's one way you can tell them apart. But all of these crows, they're all omnivores, so that they'll eat insects and vegetable matter, but they're also well known as scavengers, and particularly if you go out on any of the highways, often you'll head into a big straight stretch with a bit of roadkill, and you'll see sometimes dozens of crows just feeding off them, and they're kind of performing a service actually and cleaning up the carrion, but I think that's aided the population numbers for them a lot. So,
are there too many? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, if the activities that we're creating is boosting their numbers, then you've got to wonder how sustainable that is. And certainly we'd like less roadkill, so that may affect their numbers, but no, I wouldn't say there's too many. I mean, they're native to the area, so
we're probably just seeing them around our homes a lot because they've learned to adapt, I assume.
Yeah, exactly. And the intelligence is part of the way they adapt. But all three of them are heading into the breeding season soon, and Terrigen crows will actually swoop. I don't know about ravens, Australian ravens or little crows, but I've been swooped by a Terrigen crow. And it's actually a bit of a comical thing. It's not like a magpie. You don't feel your life is in danger because they won't get close enough to hit you, but they'll just follow you up the street, swooping around and calling and staring at you. So it's a funny experience. I suppose it's a bit like the Birds movie. If you're into it, you enjoy it. I found it quite enjoyable when I got swooped by them, but I suppose it'll freak some people out.
Yeah, I don't have any problem with swooping. I actually think it's quite amusing.
Have you been hit by
come on,
though?
bring it on. You know, I have a bit of a joke with the kids, and they never have hurt me, of course.
Yeah, well, it's
rare.
always funny till you get hit. I got done by a magpie in Brisbane years ago. I was pushing a pram, and I felt this flutter on my shoulder, and I turned around, and it got me right between the eyes, right on the forehead. And
oh, wow.
If it had decided to go for one of the eyes, like there was a second or two where I didn't know what was happening, and I was completely open. So, but that's magpies, not crows, of course. So,
they're different. So crows won't do that?
No, they won't get that close to you. So
yeah, right.
The magpies will want to make contact. Crows will just make a lot of noise and follow you up the street.
But I just tell my children they're being protective parents.
Yes, exactly.
They're trying to protect their young. So just beware. Now, I'd love to hear some of these crows.
Yes, okay. So we've got some recordings here. So why don't we have a listen to the Terrigen Crow? So the most common one in the eastern part of the listening area.
The noisy one.
And so the thing to note there is right at the end, the last call just was a little bit softer, just descended just a little bit. And then
loud and then slightly softer. Yes.
Yeah, but still kind of very similar to the other calls. But let's have a listen to the Australian raven now.
Sorry, I should laugh, but I like that drawl at the end. But I think the Terrigen Crow is a bit louder than the Australian raven. There's definitely a difference. That draw out at the end.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. And that's a diagnostic thing to listen for, is if it kind of strangles or draws out the last call, then you definitely know you've got an Australian raven. And then the little crows, which we get out west in the drier country, let's have a listen to them.
Ah, they're the soft ones.
Yeah.
Much softer.
There's a few birds calling there, but it's more of a nasally sound and not as drawn out or as kind of loud as the Terrigen Crow is drawn out as the Australian raven. So the sounds are usually the best thing that you've got to identify them, but you can pick up a few things in flight as well. So the Terrigen Crow, it's more of a compact bird. It's got a broader tail with shorter wings. The Australian raven has longer wings. They're on a bit of an angle, and the little crows will fly quite high, and they've got more of a rounded tail and a bit more agile in the air. So you might be able to pick some of those features, but really it's the call that's going to give you the best way of identifying them straight up. I think.
Yeah, very different. Actually, I wouldn't mind playing them again if you don't mind. I will just repeat those. Hang on.
I'll just move my phone away from my ear, though.
So this is the Terrigen Crow. This is the Australian raven. I love that drawl at the end. And this is the little crow. And crows, although small, with little heads, it definitely blows out of the water any of those thoughts that small heads mean small brains, because crows are renowned for their intelligence. Why is that, Scott?
Yeah, that's right. So, it's to do with the way bird brains evolved, and so the main thing for most birds is the requirements of flight. So everything has to be light and efficient, and so bird brains are quite different to mammal brains in a lot of ways. And so out of all the birds, parrots and crows are the smartest, and they have a very high brain size to body size ratio, which is a good indicator of intelligence. So their brain size to body size ratio is higher than that of other birds, but it sits just under primates. But here's the thing, though, the density of neurons in bird brains is a lot higher. So parrots and crows actually have a lot more pallial neurons in the forebrain, and so that's a part of the brain and the kinds of neurons involved with cognition and thinking. And so they will have more than a primate brain of about 4 times the size. So it's just because the efficiency of the brain and the density of the neurons is so much higher. So if you look at a crow, for instance, they'll have more neurons than a capuchin monkey, but the capuchin monkey's brain is roughly 4 times larger. So it's all about the efficiency and the density of the neurons in their brain. And so some examples of what they've done. I mean, everyone in Queensland's heard of how crows were probably the first animals to work out how to eat cane toads, so they flip them over and avoid the poison glands. And I've seen crows do amazing things. So, like, go to rubbish bins, pull out plastic bags. In fact, I actually saw one when I used to work at the Queensland Museum. One went to a bin in the dinosaur garden. It pulled out a plastic bag, upended it, and there was a KFC box in there. It then opened the KFC box and ate the chips that were in that box. And down at Lake Annan, in fact, I filmed this down at Lake Annan a while ago here in Toowoomba. There was someone had thrown out a soft drink cup with a plastic cover over the top of it, and there's still a little bit of Coca-Cola or something in it. And the crow rotated the cup so the straw hole was at the bottom so it could get the liquid. So their problem solving and the ability to think is really right up there.
And I understand the scientists have said that that's what distinguishes them. You know, problem solving in terms of things that they've never come across before, they can work around.
Yeah, and so that they'll actually think a couple of steps ahead. So the New Caledonian crow, which is generally considered the smartest of the lot, it creates tools so it can get bugs out of, like grubs out of tree trunks, so wood-boring grubs, and it'll make a tool out of a twig, and then it'll stick it a few inches down into the grub's hole, and it will poke the grub so the grub kind of gets all rolled up, and then it bites the twig, and then they pull them out on the end of the twig and eat them, and they keep their favourite twig. And in laboratory experiments, they'll even put a couple of objects together in order to make tools to get themselves food. So
above some humans, maybe, Scott.
Yes, I think they're smarter than some of us. They think a few steps ahead, and
Yes.
the reason for that, the Hawaiian crow does that as well, but Australian crows don't. And the reason is that the islands have smaller resources, so there's more competitive pressure for them, and evolving intelligence is one way to get a competitive advantage over the other animals. So this is why we're seeing it in small islands like New Caledonia and Hawaii, but not in Australia. So that's the tool use, but the general intelligence of crows here is still right up there.
But if they had to, they would, I'm sure. Thanks, Scott. We have to disappear, but when do you have, when are you back on and what are you talking about next? Kookaburras, the laugh, the other call.
yeah, kookaburras. And you know what? There's actually a dark side to kookaburras, so we'll talk about that in 4 weeks. When's that? The 1st of June. And look, in the meantime, if anyone wants to look at, I've got a whole lot of bird videos online. Just go to birdbites.com.au or the Bird Bites Facebook page or YouTube channel. I'm filming a lot about birds and putting it up there. So if anyone wants to have a look or just follow what I'm doing as I'm exploring the world of birds, please do, just on Bird Bites.
Fabulous, Scott. Thank you so much. I'm going to actually ask people what clever things they've seen crows do around this part of the world. Maybe we'll be able to add to that.
Yeah, that'd be great. Well, Belinda, well, you have a great day, okay?
You too. That's Scott McPhee talking birds. He'll be back on the 1st of June. Now, if you have a story about a crow that you've seen do something pretty clever, they certainly do a lot of clever things. 0487 993 222 is the text number here at ABC Southern Queensland. Just send your first name and where you're from in that text.
The election. It's easy to get lost among